Morning, everyone. Just some reflections here on Northampton Town's 2-2 draw last night with Leyton Orient. I think there's sort of two sides to this here. I think, first of all, probably wanted a little bit more from Leyton Orient. Certainly at 11v11, which it was for all the first half and the start of the second. I suppose on the other hand, you've got to give some credit to Northampton, and I think there's kind of three sort of compartments of their game last night. One of which would be the fact that they controlled a lot of the play, I thought, in the first half. You can argue Leyton Orient shaded it on chances, and I do take that on board. But I think if you're looking at final third entries, which for me, I think is probably the best way to judge first half performance, because it can be very difficult to create clear-cut chances in the first half when both teams are fresh and it's tight, especially between two games between quite evenly matched sides. And I thought what Northampton did, they probably got into the final third, I would say 3 or 4 times more than Leyton Orient did. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's kind of my sort of how I read it. I think they released Kieran Bowie and Mitch Pinnock into some really good areas. They had a few shots that were blocked. They didn't create the world. I do appreciate that, but I do think they got into some great positions. I thought Mark Leonard, he justified the omission fee alone, didn't he? Really, that pass just at the end of the first half, I thought was outstanding. It was like just remembering, I've not had a chance to have another look at it or anything like that, but it was almost like there was a body sort of in front of him, and he managed to sort of lift his right leg out and just ping an inch perfect diagonal over to the other flank, and just got such a gorgeous way with the ball. And I'm really excited to see what his future is. He'll be playing championship football by next season, and I think he could be playing for Brighton in a couple of years. So certainly from his point of view, I think there's a really exciting future ahead. I think you've also got to credit Northampton against the ball as well, because every time Leyton Orient had a goal kick, pretty much all of their defenders were sort of squeezing up into the opposing half, and while they were willing to drop if Solbrin went long, it showed that intent to really force the pressure onto Leyton Orient, and I think that's where you've got to give, first of all, Leonard again some credit in terms of work against the ball, but certainly Sean McWilliams, I thought he did a really good job in that regard, especially in the absence of Louis Appere as well, who was a big miss. He's had a really good start to the season, and then I think you've got to come to the football that Northampton are playing. And I think when we think of Northampton, since Chris Wilder left, there's been 5 or 6 years where they've been quite turgid, to be honest. Largely, I know they won the playoffs under Keith Curle, but so much of their football has been sort of kicking the ball in the air, and they've probably had some good squads on paper in that time, but they've never really played good football. And I think that the football that they played to an extent last season and certainly this season, I think is the best that we've seen at Sixfield, certainly since the title-winning season under Chris Wilder, and obviously this is at a higher level. And I suppose that's the thing with Northampton. Okay, previously in League Two, when they have gone up, they've lost their manager, or they've lost some key players. But I think that there's kind of a general feeling that they've had enough individual quality has kind of carried them through in League Two, because they are one of the bigger clubs in League Two, and they do tend to do well at that level. But then I think when they come into League One, where there isn't as much there isn't the individual quality relative to the level. In fact, they've probably got one of the weaker squads on paper. They get found out a little bit by not having a clear style of play and something to build from in that sense. And that's where they've fallen down in League One in the past. And probably, if I'm honest, that was kind of part of my apprehension about Northampton Town in League One this season. And maybe that was a bit lazy on my part, because you sort of think Northampton Town in League One, they're going to struggle, as opposed to actually looking at what John Brady is building and the way he has evolved the style and the way he has built such a fantastic culture that was able to get through those injuries, especially in the second half of last season when it was double-figured absentees throughout. I've been certainly last night. I mean, I knew sort of from reading James's reports for the Chronicle that the football has been really good, and that Northampton performance-wise are probably better than 19th, and that was before last night. But certainly from my point of view, last night really hammered it home in terms of the quality of the football that they were playing. Not that it was sensational or anything like that. I don't want to overdo it here, but I do think that the build-up play, you can see what they're trying to do. They consistently do the simple things really well. You can see some patterns of play. I love the way they try and get those relationships between the wing backs and the wide centre backs, which I think was especially apparent in the first half between Akin Odemeo and Jordan Willis. Willis, I thought, was really good last night, by the way. But I think what's interesting is that they do seem to sort of dovetail quite a bit. So sometimes you actually saw Jordan Willis, even against the ball, popping up in the wing-back position to be really aggressive, and Odemeo was covering him. So that suggests they've got a really good relationship. Obviously, Sam Sherring sort of patrolled things really well at the in the middle of the back three as well. But yeah, I think Jordan Willis, I think because of his athleticism, because of his, including his pace as well, by the way, which makes him perfect for an outside centre-back spot, and his ability on the ball. I think I was probably surprised by how fit Jordan Willis looks as well, and how sort of match sharp he looks, because you could have been forgiven for thinking he's had a lot of time, I think, out of the game through injury, and you sort of, part of you sort of weren't wondering about that, but on last night's evidence, he looks a really good signing, and certainly that relationship with Odemeo looks a huge positive. I think it's probably been more difficult on the left between Patrick Bra and Manny Monte, because although Monte likes a really strong rampage, which we saw in the first half, and he's certainly got the physical capabilities to do that, he's not the most intelligent defender in the world, and I think if you want to sort of build relationships between players, that's probably what you're going to need. I can see how Monte will sort of serve a purpose for this season in terms of defending balls into the box and providing that physicality, but I do feel that if John Brady wants to really home in on those relationships between the wide centre backs and the wing backs, I'm curious to see how Manny Monte fits into that. Could move him into the middle, but then that's Sam Sherring's absolutely ripping it up there. So it's a difficult one, but I suppose in some respects a nice dilemma to have. Would have liked to have seen a bit more from Patrick Bra actually in the first half. I think his main strength seems to be that he's able to cover ground really quickly, and maybe that lends itself more to the stretched open games, as opposed to when things are a little bit tighter, and it takes a different kind of touch to open things up. So probably a quiet evening from Patrick Bra, I would suggest. But yeah, I thought Pinnock and Kieran Bowie got into some really good positions. Bowie's just, I love Bowie's movement, by the way. I think there's that feeling that he could do with a goal for confidence, but I think that I don't want him to, from my point of view, I don't want him to focus on that in a weird way, because I think if you get a Kieran Bowie that's focused on I've got to get a goal, I actually think you almost take something away from him, because what I love about Kieran Bowie is that he is willing to run into those wide areas, and he is willing to drift into the pockets, get my words right, and he creates space for other players so well. And I think that because he isn't absolutely deadly goal oriented, I think you create a few, you have opportunities that you wouldn't otherwise have with Kieran Bowie, and he's so elusive as well. He's got quick feet, really agile mind, very creative as well. So I think he's a real talent, and certainly someone that the Tartan Army can be excited about. Weirdly, I actually thought, although I think Hoskins did win a free kick in the first half, I thought he was actually one of the quietest of the three forwards, which is probably ironic considering what he went on to do. Excuse me. before I get on to the second half, I do want to get on to Leyton Orient in the first half because again, at 11v11, I was a little bit disappointed with them, even though they did actually lead going into the break. And I understand the other perspective that they created the better chances and good away performance and all the rest of it. But I feel like that's a little bit of a red herring because actually the goal that Leyton Orient scored came at a point when they were actually struggling to build a passage of play where I think initially what they wanted to do was build down the left and get Jordan Graham and Idris El Mazouni linking up. But they had a bit of a problem with that, I thought, because Jordan Graham, first of all, Jordan Graham for me, I think is a traditional winger that's still trying to make a career for himself in the modern game that's kind of gone away from his style. Because if I think of Jordan Graham's strengths, it's direct running with the ball and it's crosses into the box. I think he's limited, to be honest, Jordan Graham, and I think that those limitations get exposed more when you put him actually on the left, because not only has he got to try and get the better of athletes like Akin Odumeo and Jordan Willis, but then I think when he can't get the better of those two, because I don't think he necessarily beats either of those for pace, and B, he's playing on his unnatural side, so you've got to do more to get across away. So it's kind of like I think he tried to play one ball into El Mazouni, who sort of made a run, sort of underlapping him on the channel. And then kind of by that point, it felt like Northampton just had their shape and the ball went back into midfield. And I felt like that happened a couple of times. And yeah, I wasn't convinced by Orient's build-up play in the same way that I was with Northampton's. But what I will say is that I do want to give some credit to Ed Teyn because I think he's a really intelligent defender, and I think that he could recognise quite early on that the left-sided combination play wasn't going to come off, well, one time he actually played a really incisive, different kind of pass into Raul Soterio. So I think this is someone who's got the intelligence to try something different. And then perhaps more significantly, in the lead up to Orient's opener through Rob Hunt, he played an absolutely lovely diagonal to the other flank. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Ed Teyn's left-footed, and that diagonal was with his right foot, which I think is a really exciting thing because you love a two-footed centre-back that can go either way because it's great for sort of build-up opportunities, and I think that was the case for Orient. Lovely diagonal ball, and then there was a bit of play down the right for Orient that allowed Jordan Brown, I think it was, to lay off Rob Hunt. Hunt managed to dig away a shot and got it inside the near post. Possibly a few question marks over Lee Burge. I think, but I wouldn't say I was convinced by Leyton Orient by the time they scored that goal. And although they did have a second where I think Lee Bird had to deny someone from point blank range, I wasn't. Yeah, I can't say I was hugely convinced by their build-up play, and I think the fact that I'm sitting here thinking I wanted more from them is probably partly a reflection on how well they've done this season, because since losing their first three games, where they probably played better in a lot of those games than certainly in August than probably results suggested. Very unlucky at Wickham, of course. Good first half against Portsmouth. And since then, they've been in really good form and probably could have beaten Barnsley at the weekend. So I sort of came into this one expecting a little bit more from Leyton Orient than maybe what we got at 11v11. I know lots of Orient fans are really big on Jordan Brown. I know Adam Parks from the Lowdown podcast is massive on him. I can see why he gets lots of credit for his work rate. For me, I may get a bit of pelters here, especially after the Vigouroux thing last season. I'm yet to be convinced by Jordan Brown in possession. Maybe it's sort of coloured by the fact I'm watching him on the same pitch as Mark Leonard. But if I think of a Richie Wellens side, I think of them as being at their best, sort of wanting the ball and wanting to dominate the ball. And with that in mind, I think they could do that without an orthodox number six in League Two, because the intensity of their game combined with the ball carrying of Idris El Mazouni and the class of George Moncur, they could do it in League Two. I think in League One, I would like them to have a number six who can collect the ball off the defence with his back to goal and just have that passing range, because I do think they seem to be reliant on Ed Turns to play that playmaking role, even though he's on the left of a back three today. He kind of dovetailed with Jordan Brown quite a bit, as opposed to Jordan Brown really taking the initiative at 11v11, which as much as that reflects brilliantly on Ed Turns and shows what a talent he is. Yeah, I feel like if possible, I would like to see Leyton Orient have that quality number six. But I appreciate it's difficult as well, because if you want to have that creative live wire in the number 10 position, like Ruel Soterio, and Idris El Mazouni has been so strong for the O's last season and this season, and is such a big player, and then they feel like they need that midfielder in Jordan Brown who can kind of cover all bases and just keep things ticking over. So I do understand that, and maybe the makeup of the midfield doesn't allow for a quality six. However, I still feel like in certain situations they could do with that, because the way Northampton pressed in the first half, they didn't really give them much room to breathe out. And I do wonder if they had someone who could turn the press a little bit. Maybe they feel like El Mazouni should do that. I felt El Mazouni was quiet last night, and maybe that was part of the problem. But yeah, I mean, I've made no secret of the fact I'm a massive fan of Ethan Brierley. I think he's at Brentford. I think getting a loan move for him, I think, would be a fantastic bit of business in January, because I do think that he could bring that bit of personality to just demand the ball off the defence and play make and bring the quality and switch play and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying Jordan Brown was bad at that. I'm not saying he's hugely limited, but I just feel there's just an extra level possibly missing with Jordan Brown. Appreciate that he works hard and decent on the ball and all the rest of it, but I do feel like there's room there for Orient to add another option. But then that brings me into the second half, and actually Orient started really strongly, and I think maybe Richie Wellens had sort of spoken to his players at half time and kind of wanted a bit more intensity from them. That was just my reading of it anyway. And then I think Northampton just got a bit of luck where there was an error from Ethan Galbraith, and Hoskins sort of came through. And do you know what? I think because Hoskins doesn't have searing pace, I actually looked at that opportunity and thought it could have been a bit of an awkward one for him. And then I remembered Sam Hoskins is Sam Hoskins. Actually, I think the shot did have a bit of a deflection, but I think that was a big moment for Northampton, because they then got a bit of confidence from that, won the penalty, which Hoskins again put away. So a real sort of whirlwind of 5 minutes for Sam Hoskins. And I think that shows he's the one they rely on, I think, to be that clinical figure. They obviously rely on Kieran Bowie for the sort of selfless running, and they rely on Mitch Pinnock for that creativity, but they really rely on Sam Hoskins for goals. And maybe they'll try and fix that in January by bringing in a centre forward that can do much of what Louis Appere can do, but is a bit more of a killer instinct, possibly. But I think, for now, I think Hoskins is going to be crucial for Northampton, and they're going to rely on his goals. But then, of course, Kieran Bowie got sent off, and I've not had the chance to have a second look at that, why he was sent off or sort of what went on. So I'd rather not sort of get into that too much, but I think Northampton defended well in the circumstances. They obviously had to tap into the sort of Dunkirk spirit we saw from them last season when they were able to get over the line in adversity, and they came really close to doing that here. I think obviously Jordan Graham was better in the second half when Wellens moved him over to the right, although he did actually move to the left at the end of the game and got the assist for the. I think it was him who got the assist for the equaliser, so fair play on that point. But I definitely thought there was a moment just after the sending off when Graham started to look dangerous down the right and maybe a little bit more at home than we'd seen in the first half. Yeah, I'm not going to say Orient. I think Orient did take the numerical advantage. They did use it as well as you'd expect. I don't think you can sort of criticise them for that, and well done to them. They kept going until the end. But at the same time, I think you'd also kind of expect that a little bit because of the game state, because they did have the extra man and the fact that they were chasing a goal, so they didn't have something to lose. So you kind of expect them to create a lot of chances in that situation. And I think you'd have to give Northampton some credit for lasting as long as they did. Although possibly just on a final point about substitutions, I was kind of a little bit surprised from the point of view of both managers and how they went about things, which I'll just get onto in a moment. I think if you're in Tyree Simpson's shoes, you'd probably feel a little bit despondent that you're not getting into the starting 11 when Louis Appere is out. And I can kind of understand it because the back three system worked really well and at 11v11. And that front three of Hoskins and Pinnock and Bowie, I think all have a lot to offer, so I get it. But I think in the second half, when Northampton needed a physical outball, I feel like a bit of a muppet saying what a manager should and shouldn't have done, because so much goes into it. They have so much knowledge. They've been studying it and doing so many coaching courses and have a far greater tactical understanding than I do. So I could be completely wrong about this, but just I think if I was to put myself in the manager's shoes, I probably would have put Tyree Simpson on maybe a bit earlier in the second half, because I looked at it and I thought, although Sam Hoskins has quality, he doesn't have searing pace, which I think is or loads of physicality. I'm not saying Tyree Simpson has searing pace exactly, but I do think that athleticism that he's got and that physicality just to hold the ball up, I think could have been valuable to Northampton in those in the sort of second half, if you like. Not they didn't manage the numerical disadvantage well for a certain period, but I just felt for a bit of an outball. I think if you're going along to Sam Hoskins, I don't think he's going to win much. I think Mitch Pinnock does better in tight areas rather than wide open spaces. So that would just be my perception. Just someone who can be a bit of a reference point and someone who can give Northampton a bit of oxygen and help them get up the pitch. I personally feel like there could have been a role for Tyree Simpson there, and that's probably the one area that I would question. Maybe his attitude hasn't been right in training. Maybe there's a fitness thing. Maybe, long list. But that's just my sort of instinct on it. And then similarly, I do wonder about George Moncur as well for Orient, because when you're facing a side that's really getting almost 8, 9, 10 players back in their defensive third. Richie Wellens was saying the second half was about getting players to break into the box. And I'm not sure I totally agree with him, because I think in those circumstances, sometimes you need that subtlety of touch to actually open up the spaces. And I do wonder against 10 man in those circumstances, I actually do think that the game could have been made for George Moncur. And I think that the quality of decision making and the class that he can bring and his ability to hold on to the ball in tight spaces and his vision as well, I just feel like that he could have made a difference. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that was just my sort of feeling on it. And I don't think Moncur did he come on in the end? No, he didn't come on at all. So Yeah, personally, I'm not sure I would have gone with that, but also credit to Wellens for bringing on Shaq Ford, who got the equaliser. I thought bringing on Tom James on the right of the back three made a difference as well. Theo Archibald definitely made a difference at left wing back. I can't remember who it was who missed that header at the back post. It might have been Piggott. I'm not 100% sure on that. So, yeah, listen, maybe if that had gone in and Orient had had 20, 25 minutes to get a winner, maybe it could be a different story. But personally, I would have said maybe George Moncur might have had a bit of a part to play, but maybe I'm wrong about that as well. But listen, I think first of all, just to kind of summarise, I think you're looking at two teams that will be absolutely fine in League One this season, and I've got lots of confidence, certainly in Northampton, based on tonight, that they're going to be right as rain. And I think, those sort of three sides that they showed to themselves this evening that I discussed at the beginning, the high intensity, good football in the first half, the clinical moments from Sam Hoskins at the start of the second, and then the dogged last-ditch defending for the last 40 odd minutes. I think they've showed a lot of ingredients last night that suggest that they'll get to 50 points, dare I say, relatively comfortably. So I'm sure I'll be eating my humble pie very soon. And then Leyton Orient, I don't think we've really got any concerns about Leyton Orient as well. And I think based on their performances this season, I think they'll be mid-table as well. So, listen, well done to both teams. I think they're having really good seasons after promotion. And I think they're both thriving at the moment. And well done to Orient for going until the end and getting that last-minute equaliser. And well done to Northampton for what I saw as a really impressive performance.